Cleveland rocks, boys. Cleveland rocks.
Moon over Parma.
I mean, it does right now because it's not football season.
And thank goodness for that, for all of our sakes.
Unfortunately, I thought we were just naming Drew Carey theme songs.
That could be the episode. I mean, it will be the shortest episode ever, but I'm here for it.
But because it's so short, it might be our most popular episode ever.
That's true.
35 seconds. We're done.
30 seconds is intro and outro music. Oh my God. What a gift.
-5 stars.
I hate to inform all of you, but you are in fact stuck with the KickAss. And as we alluded to very poorly, I might add, as we are wont to do, we are talking about the 2026 nominees of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Of course, the Hall of Fame physically located in Cleveland, Ohio. I think all three of us have been there, right? I know I have.
It's been a long time, but yeah.
So I've taken wedding photos out front of it.
That counts.
Like, if that counts.
100% counts. And I don't know if it's worth a destination because it is not necessarily somewhere you'd spend more than 2 hours at. Also, Cleveland is a bit of a deterrent.
I think it depends. Like, when we record this, there's actually an interesting exhibit I would think would be interesting, would say, is the music of Saturday Night Live. That's sort of their main thing right now. I'm like, okay, that could be very interesting, but I don't know. Like, our museum expert is our guest host, Lisa, who could correct us as soon as she would hear this. But it does feel like, I don't know, you have the big exhibit and the normal collections, you might fill out most of an afternoon there. Depends on how into a lot of some of the exhibits you get.
Yeah, that SNL exhibit, talking about the artists that have come through those walls and the performances. Oh yeah, some truly iconic performances throughout the million-year run of that show. That just started its run in the UK, in fact.
Yeah,
it only took them 52 years to expand internationally, which, I mean, for television these days is pretty good. Usually, as soon as something hits in the UK, it's like a year or two before we steal it and horribly remake it over here in the US. So it's interesting to see it took it that long to come over.
We're very good at that.
And Australia, and New Zealand, and Canada.
We're not the only ones that are good at that, apparently.
No, it's all over the place. Look at how many Taskmasters there are.
Oh my gosh.
Taskmasters. Fuck, look at how many pop idols there are.
Jesus, yeah.
Or that.
Look at how many Who Wants to Be a Millionaires there are.
Oh, there's so many. And look at how many Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees there are. We did it, boys.
There's so many of those too. Good Lord.
Professional trying to reel us back in.
There are truly, I do a bit about it, but there are truly a lot. There are 17 nominees for this year's class, and it is a wide range in all possible categories, as far as familiarity, as far as popularity, as far as monetary success of artists. Yeah, we're running the gamut of genres, the whole 9 yards. This is a really, really varied list.
Yeah, very wide, very wide. And I guess, welcome to another episode of Old Man Screaming at Rocks. I don't like the last time I cast a vote, and I'm very inconsistent when I go on and do the fan vote for this, but the last time I cast a vote, I think I voted for 4 of them. You're allowed to vote for 7.
How many are, because I forgot to look at this and because I'm a good streamer or a good podcaster, how many actual entrants will there be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame once all this is said and done?
I think 7.
I think 7.
Okay.
Because they induct in the, let's see, last year was 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 or 8. It looks like it doesn't.
Yeah.
Now it's a hefty percentage of this list, at least. I mean, even if we're looking at 8, that's just under half of this list. But that also means that just over half of this list will not be getting in this year. And of those, some of those may be getting in future years. Some of them maybe not at all.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. They do not have a similar system to like the Baseball Hall of Fame, where you have 10 years on the ballot to get your votes, and if not, then you have to be worthy but via other committee. So suck it, Bonds. Suck it, Clemens. But the whole point so it's interesting to see how any of these names may or may not fall on or off in the future, depending on how they do. And it's unfortunate, I think, because a lot of very worthy names, you would think if they just do percentage wise, probably have a risk of falling off. But at the same time, we also know that the fan vote is just the facade that they will pull up. Because as far as I understand it, each of the top 7 vote getters for the fan vote, that gives them a vote among several hundred industry ballots as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. Over 1,200 artists, historians, and music industry professionals. So your fan votes, of which there have been millions cast so far, those will all amount to 1 out of over 1,200.
We'll get a live update there a little later on and see exactly what you as the music consuming public are doing when it comes to voting for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But let's circle back to a thing that Jay was talking about. We can get the old man yelling at clouds part out automatically here, because have to let go of this thing. And slowly the hall has been of saying rock and roll is this narrow band of thing. And that's all that deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And it's always been this narrow band of thing. And it's also been moving for decades. So no, like when A Tribe Called Quest got in there, like, yeah, it's not quote unquote rock and roll. And it goes back to the thing that you may have been taught, that you've kind of been pontificating on as part of the show for years, about the label of genres and the uselessness of that and such. So yeah, at least to that end, I'm like, there are absolutely, more than deserving artists here. And it doesn't really matter whether or not they would fit into traditional rock.
Yeah. And that's truthfully, like, that is, I mean, obviously, me, listeners know me at this point. Like, I'm not complaining about the Wu-Tang being on this list, right? We'll get into that. No.
That, yeah.
That's not what I was.
That was not intended by that rant at all. No.
Well, shall we go ahead and dive in and see which ones of these y'all feel are going to be slam dunks? Which ones are going to be maybe right there in that mushy middle, and which ones are going to be thrown right out to a subsequent year?
I think so. I thought to decide I'll build a show ballot so we can build our 7.
I like it.
That the podcast would put in.
I like it. I like it a lot.
And I can also in the whole process contradict some of the old man you like clown stuff, because the one year, of course, is one of the years he got to go to the damn induction, but an old boss of mine raised such a stink because Soundgarden was there to be inducted. And I'm like, but that's like, if you're going to sit here and give me the traditional argument about that, Soundgarden is as close to rock and roll as you're going to get at that exact point in the timeline, and you're complaining about it. No, I'm sorry. It was not Soundgarden. It was Radiohead. I apologize.
Still, that's such a rough take. Yeah.
Yeah, it is of the many bad takes. But you also have to remember, this is a man that I believe drove thousands of people across the city to turn off his radio when we hosted our Chicago sing-along segment. Needless to say, none of the 3 of us on the show could meet the falsetto of one Peter Cetera.
The legend.
It didn't go well.
The GOAT.
I may not have been trying. I may have been trying to torpedo this idea from its very inception and was vetoed multiple times. That's neither here nor there. I'm here to build a 7-band artist ballot and stop sidetracking the show.
Well, let's see if the first artist up for bids here is going to make our ballot, if we think that that this artist is going to be worth the nominations that they have. And by nominations, I do mean plural, since not all of these nominees, I believe 7 of them, our first time nominees. The others have been nominated over multiple times. And in this case, that is the second nomination this year coming in for the Black Crowes. The Southern Rock Darlings with 10 studio albums, 30 million total in record sales. Those record sale numbers are always kind of dubious, so take those with a grain of salt. I had to source them from a number of different areas, but they're probably close enough to give you just a ballpark range of what we're looking at per artist. 2 Grammy nominations for the Crowes, no wins, at least not yet, and no number one hits on the main Billboard singles chart, the US Hot 100. But they did have 6 number ones on the US mainstream rock chart, including Hard to Handle in 1990, She Talks to Angels from 91, and Thorn in My Pride in 1992. This being the second year that the Crowes are on the ballot, obviously didn't go as well for them last year. Do you think this is their year to cash in with an induction, guys?
I would say I kind of hope so, but also I'm not going to put money on that. Also, your 10 studio albums is off by one because they just released one last week.
My apologies to the Crowes. 11 studio albums. Thank you, Jay. Thank you.
Yeah. But I kind of hope so. I feel like, I mean, certainly all the criteria that I would come up with in my head for what belongs in the Hall of Fame, they meet all of it. And primarily, like, you know, a lot of times for these things, it only takes one, right? And the album Shake Your Money Maker is hands down one of the best rock albums ever recorded. You'd be a fool not to have it on a list of that kind. And when you think of, you know, even like the song Hard to Handle, written by legend Otis Redding, that his isn't the version you think of theirs. So they've put their stamp on rock music, they've put their stamp on the cultural lexicon, and I think that puts them in the Hall of Fame. I don't think they're going to make it, but I hope so.
You had mentioned the album that just dropped. That was A Pound of Feathers that came out last week. Do you think the recency of music being released for them or for any artist is something that could be beneficial in their quest to get into the Hall?
No, I think it works against them, truthfully.
Interesting.
That's interesting. Actually, a really interesting point about that. If you're still actively touring and putting out new music and you're not like the Stones or that level of band, that's a good question, is whether do voters tend to say, well, not now because you're still out there working, so wait until you slow down, or you just devolve to the nostalgia circuit if you're going to keep touring, kind of thing. I wonder if that is a thing. I don't think it should be, but
the only thing I could say in that regard is I do think there's a recency bias where like it's too new, it's too recent, so like people are like, oh, it's still there, it's whatever. But also they've put out 2 albums in the last 3 years, and it was a 15-year hiatus before that. So like I think you'd be hard pressed to get people to remember that they're still around. Like that these 2 new albums are not charting, like they are not making waves. Right. So maybe it doesn't matter, but
well, unfortunately, the grand voting public agrees with you, as the Black Crowes currently sit in 14th of the 17 vote getters, just over 205,000 of the 6.8 million votes cast so far.
Yeah. And like we said, that doesn't account for much in terms of the actual voting, but it does tell us which way the wind is blowing.
Correct. And again, that's not the ultimate indicator. When I actually voted so I could get a leaderboard, I absolutely voted for the Black Crowes because I agree with everything Jay said, and probably even hold up Amorica just as much as an album that goes, this is, you listen to this disc here and you'll understand why they're worthy of induction. But again, I don't know if anybody who's got a ballot, be it writer or industry insider, even bothers to look at the fan votes. I doubt it. Because why would you?
Yeah, right. I wouldn't.
Exactly. I wouldn't, but maybe that changes how the museum, and I'm not saying the museum puts their thumb on anything, but maybe they do.
They might. I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah.
Well, We go from someone who, or from a band who had an album released literally a week and a half ago, to an artist that has had an album released over 30 years ago. Sadly, truly, tragically, they're the only album that this artist has ever released, which really makes Jeff Buckley a very interesting case for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That album, of course, the legendary, beautiful masterpiece known as Grace, that was released all the way back in August of 1994, and is going to make a very interesting case amongst some of the juggernauts of album sales and of Grammy Award wins, of number one hits. Jeff Buckley didn't have that. Jeff Buckley never had a chance to have that, with us losing him way, way, way too soon. 2 million in record sales. Of course, these numbers are all skewed, and I don't even know if it's worth sharing them because they're so low for obvious reasons. But considering that you have an artist that literally has one album under their belt, that is would be a posthumous entrant into the Hall of Fame, how do y'all feel about Jeff Buckley's chances? This being his very first nomination also.
I also voted, I added him in my, because it's not just, you can't look at the output and go, well, he doesn't deserve it because there's only one record. The thing that you have to look at, and my guess is what this is going to be along the lines that Jay's going to go into, is that one record and the amount of artists that it influenced has influenced for the last 30 years and continues to do so between musicians and writers and so on. He more than warrants recognition in the hall for that.
I don't disagree with you, and I've done the fan vote twice now, once last week and once today. And last week I did vote for Jeff Buckley, and this week I did not, because I am a little torn about that. Like, the one argument I would make is that everything you said is accurate, and I do think like he has put his stamp on the music industry in a way that is unfortunately unseen largely. I don't even understand how this came about, but like, how do you go from playing in a band with Danny Carey from Tool to doing what is probably one of the prettiest like indie folk, it's not folk, but you know what I mean? Like it's quiet records of the 90s. Like he's a genius, and nobody's going to know that because all they're ever going to know is his cover of Hallelujah.
Yeah.
So while I do think he's put his stamp on the music industry, I don't think it is something that is as visible as what an entrant to the Hall of Fame might need to be.
Like the body of work just isn't there.
No, it isn't.
Which again, I hate to even use that term. You know what I mean?
I don't know if the body of work is the issue. I think one album, stellar album, like is absolutely worthy of Hall of Fame recognition. But I think Jeff Buckley kind of falls into that category of, is it enough that his brilliance existed, or does that one album have to make an impact? He did as a musician, but did the music make an impact? And that's
a really good point.
I'm on the fence, right? So I'm 50-50 here.
That's such a good way to put it, because we talk about the influence of Jeff Buckley, but we hardly ever, we probably should, to be fair, but we hardly ever talk about the influence of Grace. Right. That's a really good point. Dan, what about the fan vote for Jeff Buckley?
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how to put it, but definitely unfortunately, he seems like the guy that's been in the background, and if he's going to get recognized, it's going to be because of his fellow musicians, because he is dead last in the current voting with just over 130,000 of 6.8 million votes. Yeah,
I'm unfortunate for sure. I guess I'm not surprised by that. You know, like both of y'all said, there's a visibility factor. There's, the 30 plus year factor. So yeah, we'll see if the industry insiders who, at least claim to have their fingers on the pulse of what is good and what is legendary in the music world think differently. But again, we go the other side of the spectrum yet again for our next artist, going from one album to 16, going from one Grammy nomination to 34, going from 0 wins to 5. arguably on paper the most prolific artist of this nominated class with 220 million in record sales, 19 number one hits on the US Hot 100 chart. That is second most all time, by the way, next to like these four dudes from England. I can't remember what their name is. It's not important. Her very first single, Vision of Love, went number one. Her very next four singles after that also hit number one. Of course, I am talking about the one and only Mariah Carey. You hear about her every Christmas still, with All I Want for Christmas Is You dominating the airwaves and dominating the Billboard charts over and over and over again. This is her third Hall of Fame nomination, with nominations in 2024 and 2025. Gentlemen, I pose this question to you. Is it enough?
God, I hope so. 100% she belongs in there. 100%.
I don't disagree at all. And on the simple fact that if you look at popularity as justification, and that is a factor that gets considered, she blows away a number of other bands that I would go, man, their legacy's kind of iffy, because of their sound. And like Journey got in before she did. I think that's just timing, but still, like, if that's the case, Journey, I mean, we all have a soft spot for Don't Stop Believin', but had a similar sound, was a similar band to a lot of other at the time of arena commercial rock. They just happened to be more popular than a lot of their peers, so they got in. So yeah, absolutely time.
Yeah.
And that's always an interesting question when we play like the comparison game, because we could certainly put Mariah Carey up against, I don't have like a full list of Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominee or inductees in front of me, but I feel like I could put her up against that current list and feel pretty good about my chances of her just comparisons, just one versus the other. Yeah, 100% with you. Like this, I'm surprised that this is nomination number 3 and we're still, deliberating this. Put Mariah Carey in the Hall.
All I'm saying here is that she's third? This is her third nomination. She had to wait 3 years to get in here, and Kiss got in on their fucking first one. So you tell me.
Make it make sense.
Hey. That's okay.
Do the fans agree with our assessment of where Mariah Carey should be, Dan?
So here's the interesting thing about that is you would assume that she would be one of the more popular choices here, but right now she sits pretty much in the middle in 10th place with nearly 400,000 of 6.8 million votes. So interesting that the fan vote hasn't been. I wonder if that part of that is the influence that's like the last 2 or 3 years. She's only been around for Christmas. And then she's been around for Christmas.
She is Christmas on the radio. There's
right.
Here's the thing.
You're not dodging that song.
I'm not a fan of that's like all you hear for 3 months. But the thing is, you could induct her on that song alone.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, forever. I think that's the main difference. And we might be of the right generation to kind of feel that flip. Much like the internet. Forever growing up, for us, the Christmas song was probably something by Bing Crosby. And that was just, this song is Christmas. And then
Burl Lives.
That and Burl Lives. And a bag of fresh Valencia oranges. But now you flip that to a complete different generation and they don't know who the old crooners are.
Yeah.
But every year, I mean, there's memes, there's jokes about it now that once Halloween goes away, it's finally Mariah season. Aside from the psychos who start in July, but that's neither here nor there.
Like, we do memes about it, we do bits about it, but the fact that we're doing memes and bits about it says everything we need to know.
And that tells you something about the song itself, the connections it's made, and no, it's not the most technically amazing song, but as we've pointed out multiple times on the show, it doesn't need to be to catch on and hit people.
Yeah, this isn't the technically sound Hall of Fame.
No.
We move on to another interesting case. I'm going to stop saying that. They're all very interesting with very few exceptions. We have an artist who has kind of taken an entry in a band, in a fairly popular band, and kind of parlayed that into a far more popular and far more successful solo act after his stint with that band. The band, of course, being the Great Genesis, the solo artist being our fourth nominee that we're discussing, and that being Phil Collins on his very first nomination into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. 8 studio albums amassing 150 million in sales. Very similar Grammy numbers to Mariah Carey, with 27 nominations, 8 wins, making him tied for this class as far as Grammy wins with 8, with an artist that we will get to here shortly. 7 number 1 hits on the US Hot 100, including Against All Odds, Take a Look at Me Now from 1984, A Groovy Kind of Love from 1988, shout out to the Slow Motion Chicken Dance, and Another Day in Paradise from 1989. We can absolutely just disregard the Genesis part of Phil Collins's discography and just talk about his solo work. A, because I don't think the Genesis part really makes a difference, and B, because I think the solo part is the bulkier part of his body of work. So with that said, does Phil Collins make it in on his first go?
What are we even talking about? Like, is this even a question?
It shouldn't be.
No.
It should not be. No, sir. Just like with Mariah Carey, I don't know that this is a point of discussion, but it is her third nomination. So who knows what the recording industry's thinking.
And to those old men yelling at the sky that things, Phil Collins is your rock musician too. Like there's really there's no bar. There's no hindrance in any capacity to him being in the Hall of Fame. So really, like this one, there's no question. It's not even a thing.
I have nothing to add because you're 100% correct. Like, I don't know what you want. What else you want? Because you keep, I mean, unless we're going to sit here and keep picking out personal favorites from his solo discography, which we could do for quite a while. But no.
Or we could just put a pin in that for a Phil Collins one song episode for the future.
Like the way you think.
I'm going to open that spreadsheet here the next time through. But yeah, no, it's not a question. He absolutely deserves to be in there. He's already, despite the fact, he's technically been in for the last 16 years. That's fine. Put him in again.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. Very true.
And finally, America agrees with nearly 700,000 of 6.8 million votes. He's currently sitting second in the fan voting right now.
As he should be,
now
at least in the top 3.
Now is the time to speculate who number 1 is.
Yeah. Well, I saw it, so I
put your votes in the comment section because I guarantee you will be wrong.
Right.
Yeah, you might pick like the least likely artist to be number 1 on this list right now, and you'd have a really good chance of being right. It's fascinating. So we've gone through 4 artists so far. We've got 1 absolute lock, 1 that should be a lock but still hasn't gotten in after 3 tries, 2 that probably are not going to get in, and we get to our 5th artist with a grand total of 18 studio albums. That is the most of this class by not a huge margin. There's an artist with 17, but 18 still is a enormous body of work. This artist also on her first Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nomination, 13 million in sales, 15 Grammy nominations with 2 wins coming off of the heels of that. No number 1 hits on the US Top 100, but she does have 1 number 1 hit on the US Adult Contemporary chart, and that is her hot single, presumably her biggest single, on the only one from 1993. That is Melissa Etheridge. What are we thinking about Melissa's chances in this, her first campaign to get into those hallowed halls in Cleveland?
Deserved, but won't get in this year. I don't think there's any question that she should be, probably, but will maybe take a couple of times through, I think. Because you have to remind a lot, you're going to have to remind a lot of people who don't live in that like full blues and roots rock world why she has had such an impact since the early 90s. So I think, again, even in the industry, it may be a knowledge campaign that has to be waged before she gets in there.
Yeah, I would say, deserved, sure, but if I can't even be arsed to care about her entrance, and I don't know what kind of hope she has.
Yeah, it is at least somewhat of a comfort to artists that don't get in, that at least as far as I could tell, there's no maximum number of nominations. There's no guarantee that you will be nominated in back-to-back years. In fact, we have a couple of artists coming up who have multiple nominations that are not in consecutive years. So if we don't see Melissa Etheridge getting in this year, we may not see her for, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Does America's fan vote agree with our assessment of Melissa Etheridge?
Pretty much, just shy of 284,000 votes. She's currently sitting in 13th. Yeah, and like I said, it's one of those artists that it's just going to take a re-education campaign to remind people, like, hey, by the way, I'm here, and here's all the good stuff I did.
And that's one of those things, like, that moment is, someone would be like, okay, so some super fan is going to come up and go, Melissa Etheridge got inducted into the Hall of Fame. Woo! And I'm going to go, cool.
Like, yep. Like, I really like those singles from the 90s. Those are pretty good songs. Yeah. I mean, it is, I know that sounds dismissive. It's so not intended to be.
No.
It's the admission that there's a lot of names. And if you go up and down the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I'm sure everyone has those names where you look at it and go, I know that name.
Right.
Because I've heard it used in the context of musically important or Hall of Fame talent, but I'm not as familiar with their work, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And kind of comparing Melissa to the Black Crowes, she will also have a new studio album coming up later this week. In fact, Rise will be released, her first studio album in 5 years, coming out this Friday on March 27th. Obviously, by the time that you listeners have heard it, this album will be out by that point. But yeah, we'll see what kind of impact, good or bad, that has to her potential standing. Moving on to another artist on their first nomination, and another artist alongside Jeff Buckley that has only had one studio album, at least as a solo artist. That album amassing 25 million in sales, an overall take of 19 Grammy nominations with 8 wins. And that album being fairly legendary in its own right, being the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, with Doo-Wop That Thing being the big single, and also being a number one hit on the U.S. Hot 100 from back in 1998. Lauryn Hill, in her first nomination, it's the same conversation as Jeff Buckley. There's a other body of work there, but just as a solo artist, is it enough?
I don't think so. I really do. I think she falls into that category of icon that did enough publicly to kind of tarnish her own reputation, just with, the way she handled interviews and stuff for a while in the early 2000s. But if we're focusing on the music and the impact that the music had, I think, she's going to get compared favorably, most likely, to other artists at the same time. Your Mary J. Blige's, your Toni Braxton's, your like all of those other artists that were there and popular and very big, and in most people's estimations, probably just as good. And that works against her.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I think, man, it's tough to kind of completely encompass her legacy, because I think there's probably you could make an argument that she really does deserve 2, as one for herself and one as the member of the Fugees. And if the motion on the floor was to nominate the Fugees again as a group, like I'm absolutely putting them in.
Yeah,
like it's tough to go, no, I don't think so. I'm gonna say no this year, probably not, because the makeup of this class is so unique. But it's also, I mean, it's going to eventually be hard to keep passing over one of, if not the greatest female rapper of all time. And I know there's a major bone of contention. There's a lot of people that could claim that title, but she's got to be in that upper echelon.
I think I would have gone with you as well on saying like Lauryn Hill, no, Fugees, yes, but kind of shockingly, the Fugees themselves have only had 2 studio albums to their name.
Sure.
I would have thought that it was a much longer, maybe not 18 albums, but certainly longer than 2 albums, overall body of work.
Yeah, not even enough for a greatest hits.
Not even enough for a greatest hits. Does America think that her hits have been great enough to vote her in as the fan vote?
No, she's also hovering in that same area, just one spot behind Mariah in 11th, with 353 of 6.8 million votes cast. And I keep emphasizing that because as we're going throughout the show, these numbers keep changing and the total number of votes keep going up.
When we say, like, we made the joke, like, fuck it, we'll do it live. Like, we are doing this part live. This could not be any liver.
Right. One of these days we'll do this live in front of a studio audience, but right now we're going live to tape.
Oh, I swear to God, it says that.
I am so excited. We've talked about that for so long, listeners. Right. Like you will get us full, unadulterated, and apologies in advance because it's not.
No, honestly, at some point, I think our final career goal as podcasters should be to do this either at a comedy club in front of 10 paying customers, or just sitting in the corner like a shitty local sports show, sitting in the corner of a bar that just randomly has 3 guys in headphones, and people are curious enough, but no one actually wants them to turn up the stereo to hear what's being done in the corner.
Yeah.
Errant Tomato comes over.
I thought tonight was trivia night. What are we doing?
I only make that reference having done enough of those shows.
Well, let's see if our next artist would get anyone to turn the stereo up for his music, or if he would get tomatoes, maybe a little bit of each. Very similar deal, an artist that got his start as the lead of a band before breaching out into a much more popular, much more successful solo career, to the tune of 7 albums, 40 million record sales, 3 Grammy nominations, no statues, no wins, but did at least have one #1 hit on the US Hot 100 for a cover of the song Money Money, a live version, in fact, from 1987. Billy Idol, welcome to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? ?
Sure, why not?
Why not? Billy Idol, you're in.
That's one of those, he's got a 50-50 from me too. I split my vote.
I'm of two minds, is that you can put him up there for some influence, because he did, as you mentioned, just fronting Gen X, and one of those influential, not early punk bands, because they were part of the second wave of British punk to a certain extent, where it was kind of sandwiched in there between the Sex Pistols and New Wave. So there's some historic thing there, but I don't know about this one. I don't know.
My thought more is that he'll get in on Image.
There is that. There is absolutely that. And that's actually been one of the biggest criticisms from the punk community, is that he was just playing punk. He was just a pretty boy who was the fake punk. He also put out Cyberpunk, which, man, does that record have a lot of reasons for me to go, let's pump the brakes here, Big Shoots.
That album has a lot to apologize for.
That album has a lot to apologize for. I know it came out in 92, but I still need someone to say, yeah, my bad.
Perhaps the worst album art of all time as well.
It's pretty bad.
It's rough. Even for the 90s, it's rough.
And even to the point we made about the Black Crowes and stuff earlier, he and Melissa Etheridge, he dropped an album in 2025, and it was weird.
Weird alone does not disqualify.
Nope.
It's just a matter of what type of, if he's just deciding, look, I'm at the age where I'm going to make weird music because I hung out with Timothy Leary in the 80s, so why the fuck not?
Sure. And now I sing songs called John Wayne.
As one is wont to do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's an odd dude, but I think he makes it in on Image and on the back of White Wedding.
That is true. That song is really hard to deny.
Yeah.
Well, let's say the oh, sorry, Jay.
I was going to say, between that, Rebel Yell, and Money Money, I think he's got it. I think he's in.
And of course, the best thing to follow that up is some of his best songs were his least known singles. Eyes Without a Face. However, this is where the voting public is in agreement with you. Just pipping a Wu-Tang Clan to get in in seventh at 441 votes currently. 41,000 votes currently, pardon me.
Interesting. I would have thought that Billy Idol was much lower in the fan vote specifically.
Yeah, people still love White Wedding. What can you say?
So yeah, it's great in Guitar Hero or Rock Band, whichever one it was in. Maybe both. All right, we move on. We're getting close to about halfway through this list, and we are going to go down under for our next choice. First year nomination for this band, 12 studio albums to the tune of 50 million record sales. Just like Billy Idol, 3 Grammy nominations without a win. And also, just like Billy Idol, there's a lot of corollary between the two. One and only one number one hit on the US Hot 100, that being 1987's Need You Tonight. Is Sydney's own In Excess going to make it here in the US flavor of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? We got a shrug emoji.
I think I see a lot of similarities in with him, with In Excess and Billy Idol in this whole thing. I really do. And I think, again, it goes both ways. I don't think a lot of people would look at In Excess and go, yeah, it's a band that sold 50 million albums.
Right. So true.
And I don't know if that would be a possible problem. I don't know if they've continued without Michael Hutchence, and I don't know if that is a thing that might kind of change perception. Not that they're the first. God, I don't know how it sounds to say this. Not that they're the first band to lose a lead singer and continue on.
Right.
But he was also kind of the heart and soul of that band. So things change when you lose that creative driver, I think.
And I do think too, like, you know, while there's a lot of parallel with Billy Idol, I do think it's one of those where, you know, the hit comes on, like, let's say Rebel Yell pops on the jukebox when you're hanging out at the bar. You'd be like, oh, Billy Idol. And when Need You Tonight comes on, you're gonna be like, that's In Excess. Like, it takes a beat to remember. It's not that it's not known, but it takes a beat. And I think that makes a difference. Like, I don't know. It's not the first band that comes to mind when you think of anything, for that matter, let alone Hall of Fame.
Not that level of like iconic recollection of like listening fandom as many of the other artists on the list.
If I had to pick something from In Excess's career that would put them in a Hall of Fame, it's the bit with the signs, the prompt cards being tossed to the side that has been used in like everything since then.
Yeah, good point.
That image in the video is the one thing that I think that's a Hall of Fame moment, right? Like, that's an image that is iconic. That's what they're known for. Not so much the music.
And those moments add up for sure.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, we're in the MTV era where that was just as important. So they had that image that they could sell as opposed to just the record. And that might be enough to push some voters over.
Yeah. And for me, like, it's fine if they wind up in the Hall of Fame. I don't have any opposition to it, but I'm not going to vote for it.
Does America agree? Do they also not have any opposition? Are they also shrug emoji to In Excess?
You know, Voting Swerve, they're fifth. 470,000 votes. They are fifth in this, currently in the fan voting. So apparently, actually, people don't need that extra beat. As soon as they hear that the opening riff of Need You Tonight, they know exactly who and what is coming up.
Yeah, sure.
Or the Hall of Fame voting public, huge marks for Suicide Blonde, one of the two.
It's fine.
I don't know anything anymore. I will admit, I know what the number one is.
You think that's confusing.
This has been a black, because I know what the number one artist is on that list. I explicitly did not look at the rest just so I could be surprised, and color me surprised. I expected them firmly in the bottom 5, not in the top 5.
We'll get there. Since we've done that, let me try and do a really bad segue.
Okay.
Because it's kind of like my stock and trade here. It's one of the reasons. It's one of a very short list of reasons that they keep me around. And I know that because it's on the whiteboard in the studio behind me. And I keep trying to add things, and someone always goes back and erases them. but I'm looking at the clock and going, we have so much more to get through because we have a lot of things that we need to talk about. Maybe this is a good time to say, you should come back to this very spot in a couple of days for part 2 of this episode. We'll continue to hammer our way through all of these Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees and get to the votings. And eventually we'll put our own ballot together for what it's worth. And one of these days we will buy this. Like one of these days, this vote will matter to somebody.
Will absolutely matter. Yeah, we still have several artists to get through, several surprises, several expected names that we are probably going to push pretty hard, and some things that might surprise you. We still haven't gotten to number 1 on our fan vote list, for example. So enjoy that when you come back for the next episode of the Fairly KickAss podcast.
And of course, if you really can't wait until the rest of this episode drops, you can just like placate yourself with one of the numerous episodes that we've done before this. Just scroll up on your favorite podcast provider. Something I'm sure will hit your fancy. Hopefully. We've got a lot there. Something you got, like something, please.
And I guess if it doesn't, then tell us that you hate it all. That's a very fair sentiment to have. At Fairly KickAss at Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. We will accept all criticism. We will probably throw away all of that criticism as well, but we will at least accept it first.
Throw it away. I think we read it, dwell on it, internalize it, make it a part of our soul, and cry about it.
Well, now they know that they can do that to us. So now we're going to get the flood of social media messages.
Oh, I was going to say, so this isn't just the time to admit that all those comments are why my therapist just bought a new Porsche. No, it's not good.
Yeah.
No. All right.